Thank you all for being here today. We'll go ahead and get started. So as I mentioned, I'm Ayanna McGee. I'm the Associate Project Director with the CARE TA Center, and we are here today for a panel presentation hosted by Stanford Sierra Youth and Families, some wonderful colleagues of ours. And this is for how to make crisis continuum services responsive to families experiencing crisis. So I just want to give a brief few disclaimers. So the views and opinions and content expressed in this presentation today do not necessarily reflect those of our funder, the California Department of Healthcare Services, or our CARE TA Center partner agencies listed below. In the case of any security issues that may occur, the session will immediately end and not resume. A separate email would be sent to all of you with any further instruction. And just a little bit about the CARE TA Center. So the CARE TA Center, Crisis and Recovery Enhancement TA Center, works to strengthen the crisis care continuum and justice diversion efforts to help all Californians access wraparound services and supports. The CARE TA Center provides training, TA, and resources to help behavioral health care coordination among and response among Mental Health Services Act funded stakeholders and partners. And I just want to note on our website, care-mhsa.org, you can access all of our resources. If you go there, you'll find a variety of resources, including a great asset map listing out crisis care and justice diversion resources across the state of California by county. You'll find our resource library, which has over 400 resources. It's a really extensive and robust bank of toolkits and guides, webinars, et cetera, all related to crisis care and justice diversion and even specific populations. You'll also find any of our recorded trainings that we've hosted over the past year, and also a listing of upcoming trainings that you can expect to see from us over the next few months. And so today, our colleagues at Stanford Sierra Youth and Families are holding a discussion on how to make crisis continuum services responsive to families experiencing crisis. This is a two-part, this is the second part of a continued conversation from the original session that we held at the Anti-Racism and Crisis Continuum of Care conference we hosted this summer. And so along with all of you, I'm really excited to hear all of the families and representatives we have today talk about their perspectives on accessing crisis care services, and discuss ways that crisis care can be more responsive to families. So with that, I will pass it off to my colleague, Christina.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our virtual learning event that we're having today. We have some great panelists for you that you'll hear from in regards to crisis continuum of care in this part 2 of this conversation. So I hope you're here and you're logged in to learn about, families and their perspectives on accessing crisis care services and discuss the ways that crisis continuum of care can be more culturally responsive to families, especially those who are of BIPOC. This includes, we're going to hear today from our panelists specific services that they've received in crisis, how those services help them, how maybe they didn't help them. We'll hear some feedback on ways in which maybe services can be tailored so we can be most responsive in a culturally competent and humble way, but also just what do families and youth need that work. So we're going to go ahead and jump in a little bit and have folks introduce themselves. We're going to go ahead and start with Robert.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Jackson. I was with the Stanford Youth Solution in the FIT program. At the time we received Terrell, he was 11. And he was difficulty. And I say that very modestly. He was very difficult to understand. And so I didn't know anything about Terrell because he was my wife's grandson. And I was, just married to my wife. And naturally, I accepted him as my grandson as well. But I noticed that there was some problems with him. I'm going to use the word problems because I didn't know anything else or what else to say. That he wouldn't communicate. If there was a problem with it, he wouldn't say, "Well, this is bothering me." And so, and he was having throwing tantrums, and he didn't get his way. He would break things and scream and just throw a fit. And I didn't understand, just like so. I retaliated instead of trying to figure out what was wrong by me fighting, not fighting, but arguing with him, screaming at him. That wasn't working. So I had to figure out, my wife and I figured out what we should do, who we should call. We called Stanford Youth Solutions. So they connected us with a counselor, and we went in, talked with him first without Terrell. And they started explaining to us what ADH PTS, what he was going through, and what we should do, how we should handle it. So we sat down, we talked to one of the, I think the psychiatrists that had there at the location, which is in Sacramento. And he explained to us what it was about. So he gave us some pamphlets to understand and read to figure out what type of level he was at, prescribed some type of medication that maybe help him to calm down so he wouldn't be so agitated at little things. And so that helped. That really helped because I did not understand anything about what ADHD was and what PTS, what a child has PTS, what, traumatic experience that he dealt with in Baltimore, Maryland.
So you're talking about post-traumatic stress disorder,
yes.
PTSD.
Yes, yeah. PTSD. Thank you. I left off the D.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Amaya. But Robert, we're going to hear more of your story.
Okay. Sure.
I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Amaya. Amaya is our youth representation on the panelist. And so we're super excited to hear from you. Go ahead, Amaya.
Well, hello. My name is Amaya. I'm representing on behalf of all youth. I personally, dealing with I just recently had gotten diagnosed with being bipolar, and I've always had depression, anxiety, and sometimes your family can't always help, and sometimes your therapist isn't always available, and I know that my therapist and youth advocate are not always available. So when I'm given resources like the hotline that are given and on-call support, they're helpful. But there's there's pros and cons to everything. And there's definitely pros and cons with things like that. And I think that a lot of things that the youth struggle with is being able to express that without judgment. I feel like there's not a lot of kids ever feel like there's a safe place for them. Because personally myself, it took me a really long time to find a safe space. And sometimes that same space isn't always with people. It's sometimes it's words, music, writing, and etc. But I think just finding that comfort within the willingness to accept support from others, and is a big thing that the youth is struggles with nowadays. And the parent, like how Robert was saying, he had to try to figure out a way to understand. I think that it took my parents a really long time, and they still are to this day working on how to understand how I'm not different, but I just need a little bit more support from them than maybe my other siblings do. And it's finding that happy medium within my parents, because my father is African American and doesn't believe in that mental health. So it is hard having to explain, and I feel like another thing with kids is they don't like repeating themselves and having to repeat their trauma and say it over and over again, because that's hard. But yeah, that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Maya. And we're going to get into more of some specifics in regards to crisis and what your thoughts are and how we can respond. I'm going to now pass it over to Mr. Henry Broussard so that he can introduce himself and share a little bit. And then once that is done, we'll get into the questions.
Hello, everybody. My name is Henry Broussard. My fiance and I, Josephine Jackson, were introduced to the program via getting help for her youngest son, Jeremiah Jackson, who has a myriad of behavioral health and some slight mental issues. I want to say they're more child-esque. It's what I believe is more common for most children than not, but there's been quite a few that are beyond my realm of understanding. So when we were partnered within the program and given help to try to understand exactly what is going on with him as far as his behavioral issues and why he has done a lot of the things he's done, which we're still trying to figure out, definitely still process. That's actually how we do the program. Me, myself, my piece as a father and trying to parent this new and unfounded ways that he acts is definitely trying for me. Given my experience, I'm a 20-year veteran of the armed forces, with serving both in the Marine Corps and Army and spending a lot of time as a drill sergeant for 3 years on the trails. My parenting style is more so one of, I'll show you, but I expect you to comprehend and act accordingly. And if you can't toe the line, I'm an enforcer and a teacher. And where Josephine is the setter of the rules and the boundaries, it's my job to pick up the slack if our children aren't towing that line, so to speak. And so
that's good partnership, right? Like that's good partnership is when
that's what I always
we have that, when we have the opposites.
Yeah. When Rose runs the household, she sets the boundaries and the limitations. It's my job when I come into the door. If things aren't going the way they're supposed to, it's what I like to refer to as a classic shark attack. I just blow water and I'm swimming towards it. But the fact of the matter has come to light, especially with Jeremiah, is that talking is more apt, even though it seems to fail more often than not, but it's still a better way of doing things than being gruff all the time. So that's kind of at least my standpoint for now. Who knows if it'll change? I'm not sure yet, but that's how we ended up within the program and are willing to be participating.
Thank you for sharing, Henry. And I just want to reiterate, like, while we all are on different journeys, right? We're all learning. And I think that we're going to hear about that process. But more specifically, today, we're really talking about crisis care services. So when you were in the heat, right, when it got really challenging and difficult in those moments, like, that's what we're talking about. Like, how did folks respond to you? How were you supported? What were the things you learned? And crisis can be anything, right? We know that for every family, crisis can look different. And for us here, we're specifically talking about services our children or ourselves may be utilizing and how that system may have responded. So the first question for you all is, can you tell us about what systems you utilize during a crisis?
Well, I can be the first to respond to that. We recently we're in a huge financial crisis after my exit from the Army. Dealing with the Department of Veterans Affairs is if anybody knows anybody who's exited the service, the armed services, and has had to deal with the VA, it is a trying experience to say the least. They like to drag their feet on pretty much any and if they can find a corner to not either bear the proper responsibility or give the proper amount of treatment or care, whether it's mental or physical or financial, boy, oh boy, will they do it. And since I recently retired on the 14th of January, I was told initially that I would be receiving my 100% retirement and that I had nothing to worry about and my money would start flowing in to help continue support my family. That was absolutely not the case. And so being that, having to fight tooth and nail, and I'm still going through that process, I've had to substantially subsidize my savings and basically down to almost nothing, just to keep our household mostly afloat. I am the one who handles all the finances, makes sure the appropriate funds go where they're supposed to be. And we got to a point where we were barely keeping our head above water. We had a substantial rent increase within our home. Our bills were piling, and I was thinking, I'm also facing a myriad of health issues, so that did not make anything easier. We had reached out to the Sacramento, the SERA2 program. I forget exactly what the acronym stands for, but I know it's Emergency Rentals Assistance Program. And they had us submit all these documents, our finances, where our money was going, what our bills look like, etc. And if you're going to call yourself an emergency assistance program, you would think you're going to move as if everything is an emergency, as if the people who are applying, who definitely need the assistance, need it right then and there, which is definitely the case. And we got approved for the program as we were notified via email. We had several representatives contact us via email, and then they just stopped. The communication completely cut off. There was no funding. There has been no word on anything. There hasn't been a single red cent sent out. There's been a million pieces of communication sent to us of what we had to do, and then we did it, and then poof, nothing happened. So in situations like that, it's hard to put faith in anything when you do exactly what you're asked to do, and then nothing comes of it. I don't know if it's a masculinity thing for me or a pride, whatever it may be, but I was always taught, you don't look for help. You try to solve a problem yourself. And it took literally everything in me to actually ask for the help. And then when I did, it was such a big letdown. There was no help there and still hasn't been seen as of yet. So in my experience, when it comes to that particular crisis, a financial matter, and an urgent financial matter at that, it very disheartening, to say the least. To not get, even a little bit of communication would have sufficed for me to say, hey, we got everything from you, but it's a slow process. Please be patient. But to say, hey, you did it, you're approved, you're good to go. And then every number that I was given doesn't answer. Every email that I got that I now respond to because I have these contacts doesn't even reach out and say, hey, I'm not with that program anymore, or I'm not on that case, or let me forward you to someone else who can help you. Just total blackout. That stinks.
So I yeah, like relying on folks that say they are there to support you, especially in an emergency, and then not having that response, that's hard. And like you said, disheartening. And even devastating, especially when looking for support and still waiting on that when your family is in need. I'm going to ask Robert or Maya, would you like to answer this question?
I can go. So personally, a crisis like line or thing that has like about the system is like the suicide hotline. I've called it before a few times, and I've been left on like hold for like an hour and a half. And to me, that's bothersome and worrisome, not only for myself, but also for others, because I can only imagine the kids have gone through like the same thing. Just being on hold when you're in such a like crisis situation like that, and like nobody else is there. When I think of like the time that I was on hold for like an hour, I think like, what if something had happened to me? Like, what if I really did give up right there? And what if that call was my last hope, like my last like speck of hope? And me being on hold, I could have done anything, you know? And then like when you get on the phone, some of them just seem like they don't want to help or they don't want to support you. Like they kind of try to get you off the phone as fast as they can. And that's hard because sometimes hotlines are the only thing that you can do in that moment. Because some parents, you can't go up to them and vocalize that and say like, hey mom, hey dad, like I'm feeling a little bit like suicidal, like I need support. Because not all parents take that the right way. Because personally, for me, when I vocalized that to my mom, I was sent to a hospital immediately. And the hospital helped me, but once I continued to try to vocalize that and vocalize that the hospital was not only like, it was helpful, but it was also hurting me because it was so easy in a snap of my fingers for my mom to let me go. And that's hard, really hard. But yeah, that's my insight.
Thank you for sharing. And I mean, yeah, asking for help and calling, again, a service, right? A crisis response service, looking for an answer and not having that reasonable time frame. And an hour is not reasonable, especially when you're in the middle of needing someone to talk to. That's very sad to hear that was your experience. Thank you for sharing, Maya. Robert?
I really can relate to Henry because I know that feeling. Military teaches you to depend on yourself. You don't ask for help. You know what to do, how to do it. And when you get put in a situation, especially when you're dealing with health and you call and no one's answering the phone or they put you on hold, it's a gut-wrenching feeling that you are alone, that no one is going to answer your call or no one is picking up the phone. You need help right now and no one is doing it. I have my family is all back east. So I really have no one out here to help me, besides my church family and my wife. That's it. And if any is, when an emergency has sometimes come about, this, there's no one to call. When you do call that person, you expect, the hospital or the triage, anybody to help you. And it's scary. It truly is scary. I had 2 heart attacks. So, when you expecting someone to come to your aid right then and there, and they take their time, like I said, I understand. I truly do. And you got to push yourself. I jumped in my own personal car and drove to the hospital because I wasn't going to wait for anyone. And sometimes it's sad, but it's true. You can't depend on other people to help you. You got to help yourself. And so when emergency, I think when crisis happen, you really got to depend on yourself or have someone there, that emergency person, because sometimes you can't rely on other, the agencies to help. You just don't, or you just can't, because they're not always going to be there for you. And that's just a realization. I'm probably a lot older than a lot of people on the line. So I retired in 89. So it's different. Things are different now. And I see that. Thank you.
I'm wondering, and this is kind of a question to you all, when you did reach out to a crisis service, what worked?
I can say what did work was like being able, like certain people on the hotlines did help process through whatever was going on during that time. So just being able to like process through like what's going on, I think that was like the most helpful part. But I could say like it was frustrating having to process after waiting so long. But I feel like the processing part is the most beneficial.
So the processing of the feelings was helpful. It was just the time in between that part was ultra frustrating.
Can understand that wholeheartedly. Recently, I spent a week in the hospital, actually at the VA hospital. I had a infection on the back of my head that I went to the emergency room every day for 5 days straight. Every day, 5 days straight, to get it looked at, to get treatment. I was brushed off twice by 2 different physician assistants who just told me, oh, you just got a hair bump on the back of your head. I actually had a small cluster of tumors on the back of my head. The first 2 times, they didn't run any tests. They didn't do an ultrasound or a CT scan or anything. Just said, oh, you have some slight infection, razor bump. They actually even tried to blame my barber, which was very disrespectful to me because my barber has taken care of me for years. And stating that he probably just didn't clean his clippers off and cut your hair and gave it in. So I ended up repeatedly going back to where it was the nurses and the rest of the physician assistants in the VA hospital knew me on a first name basis. So there's some, hey, you're back again. It became a all too comfortable and familiar feeling, which it shouldn't have been. It shouldn't have been well, now we're on a first name basis because you've been here so many times. It should have been a proper treatment. Finally, the head of the ED department had seen my name come up so many times, he took over. And when he took over, he ran all the necessary tests that no one else was willing to actually put in for. They more wanted to give me a slight treatment and get me out the door from triage than to properly assess my situation. And so once that happened, once he took over, it wasn't immediate. But after running a battery of tests, after diving into and going, okay, he's coming here every day for 5 days straight. He is in an immense amount of pain. He's not giving up. What we're doing isn't working. What is going on? That's when answers started actually coming into place. And once that happened, the proper diagnosis was made and a procedure was done to remove the small cluster of tumors off the back of my head, which were starting to press against the base of my skull. And if it wasn't for him actually taking that time in that crisis and actually having some follow-up, it would have never happened.
I know Henry's not here to hear this, but I'm happy eventually someone saw the pattern and was able to intervene. So that is good and what's working. It's sad that it took that many times for him to advocate for himself to finally be heard. But I'm happy that one person was looking for that and intervened to change. And I'm going to pass it to you, Robert. What worked for you?
Every time Henry would say something, it just triggered something that I went through. And I went back east to visit my family back in 2000. I had a stone, was the size of my fingernail, lodged in my Euslavic gland. So you have 4, and you have 2 in, 2 out in your mouth. So I couldn't eat. And when I started eating, it would, my whole side of my face would swell up like a golf ball. So I went into the VA to find out what was the problem. So they told me you probably had some type of infection, or so they gave me some antibiotics. Say, take this for 5 days, and if it doesn't go away, come back. Okay. Took 5 days, nothing happened. Came back. So I saw an ear, nose, and throat doctor. And he said, okay, so, you have a sinus infection. Take this for 5 days. If it doesn't go away, come back. So, mind you, I didn't have transportation back east. I had to use my sister's car to travel 20 miles, 17 miles each way to go to the VA that's on the downtown Baltimore. So finally, I saw a emergency doctor who worked in a MASH unit, and he knew these little things. And he said, let's do a CT on you and see what's really going on. It's okay. So I got a CT scan, and he told me what was the problem. He said, we're going to send you up to the ear, nose, and throat doctor, and they're going to schedule you to remove this stone that's in your gland. So the crisis that at this moment was I'm upset because Wyatt had to come back and forth for so many times, and he could have did this right then and there the first time. So now, not only did I have to inconvenience my sister to come pick me up because I had to have surgery. So they kept me there for 2 days. And it was the most uncomfortable feeling. You ask your family, hey, can you come get me? Well, I got to check off work to come get you. No worry about it. I can catch the bus. So what, I had a fabric ball sticking out my neck, from the overflow of the blood and whatever was coming out. And it felt like I wasn't appreciated by my own family. No one, back then when I was there, they didn't have Ubers, and they had hackers, and you got to call someone to come pick you up. I I will never forget that. Never forget that feeling that, you think your family loves you or will do anything for you, especially when we don't see them as often and as much as you should. So I learned a valuable lesson, once again, depending on myself, and that's sad that people do act this way towards you, even though it's family. They do act this way, and thank you.
I have a feeling this you and Henry, you have a lot of, parallels, and I love the stuff that you're sharing and expressing. And I want to move into just thinking about crisis response systems. What do you think is missing?
Patience. Like, I don't know how to say, like, factor time, but I'm thinking like time management. I don't know if that's the right word, but time management. And like, I don't know how to explain the other one I'm thinking of. I don't have the word. But I definitely think time management and patience.
Are you specifically referring to those hotlines that you're calling?
Correct. And also with like, I heard Henry say like he wasn't getting responses back within like a reasonable like time. Like he was sending like things back and no response. So I feel like time management was like a big thing. Like being like a company or a support for a crisis, like being able to like have enough time to manage supporting others or supporting what your like company or outline is for,
I want to piggyback off of that because I do definitely agree with the time management missing. I believe that a lot of programs that are out there, or even just if you want to generalize it within our first responders for your more common everyday crisis where people have to call 911, I believe a little bit more training could be involved when it comes to being a crisis advocate. Having a partnership within other programs that would allow first responders or people who are there, who can be there more immediately to be able to give the ebb and flow, if you will, of information to share and also take in. That way they can properly assess a situation that is happening right then and there before their eyes. I also strongly believe that one of the biggest things that is missing is understanding from the point of view of a person who is in crisis, which is always going to be hard because unless you've been exactly 100% in that person's shoes, it's going to be really hard to have that level of understanding because there's so many variables within a crisis for anyone. It could be age, sex, religion, gender, background, whatever the case may be. There's so many different variables. But I believe if you have people who have a more open understanding, or even those who have already been through the, for lack of better words, hell and high water crises themselves, it's a little hard to say, hey, okay, I see what you're going through. I want to help you. But I might know someone who has a better understanding. And that person, with them being able to relate, can help fast track the situation and see what we can move you into or get you the proper response and help. Because otherwise it's you're relying on someone's empathy rather than their understanding. And empathy can only go so far, but understanding can take you to the finish line within a crisis. At least that's my perspective.
I agree. But okay, so we have 911. You have all the call centers. Why can't we have a call center to advocate for ourselves? And it could be 611 or 211. So we're having a crisis. It's not an emergency crisis like we need a first response to go out there. We need someone like ourselves. We've been through things that a lot of people haven't been through. So we have people that have 20 plus years experience in dealing with people that's going through crises that we go through, daily crisis, people that have children that or the fire department is not able to get out to you. So there may be this one call that you make. They say, okay, I know a gentleman, I know a person or people that will advocate for you, that will send vehicles, someone will come pick you up because they understand what you're going through. They can help you. Sometimes we depend on the wrong agencies to help us because all of us are experienced in crisis situations. So we naturally will call 911 or we call the police department. A lot of times they take forever to get to you. So we need to have something in place, like a 911 call. But, it to find the people to advocate for us, to facilitate our crisis. We just don't have that. We are all like experiencing in every little thing that we know is a crisis, but we reaching out to people that don't understand the crisis that we're in or that we're going through. So we just need to talk to our assemblymen or the Congress, the councils or somebody to put these things in place. They can spend all this money on everything else, but we're still having crisis daily. So.
Agreed. Very much so agree.
Thank you guys for sharing. I think that is great insight and thoughts on implementation of things that you feel are missing. We're going to move into a different question. And this question is, do you see any need for more culturally responsive support to be in place when in crisis?
Yes, I can definitely say there should be a sort of national possible call center for just maybe they would consider it your non-emergency crisis, for lack of better wording, because when you call 911, if it's not a life or death, someone bleeding out, need for medical attention right there, emergency, they put you on what they call the call roster. So your first responders will eventually, if you're lucky, respond within a timely manner and may not even come out for a day or two. So with that being said, I guess stating, yes, there would be definitely a need for a crisis hotline of sorts, on a national or local level to within a myriad of experienced people on that line that has experience within different fields to be able to say, hey, okay, maybe you just need someone to talk to. I'm here to listen. Maybe you need assistance to get some sort of non-emergency medical treatment or mental health treatment, whatever the case may be. I believe it would be greatly beneficial to everyone if there was some sort of crisis response team on a local and national level that didn't just respond within the onset of 911 emergency calls. That way, people actually would stand a little bit better fighting chance, whatever the case may be.
I'm interested in hearing how would a system like that be more culturally responsive? So if we're looking through the lens of being culturally responsive, what would that look like?
I believe if you were to have
individuals within a certain offset team who, I mean, I hate to look at it this way, to have to give your age, your sex, your gender, your cultural background over the phone in order to be placed to the right person. But it would also be foolish of me to say that that does not matter. As much as I wish it didn't, I believe that if you were able to give that information, like, hey, yes, it's all confidential. If you give me this information, I can pair you with someone who has a similar cultural background as you, or sexual orientation, or crisis background as you, to where you're not going in blind to a situation. I've tried to help so many people in my life. Random strangers who I've just encountered in emergency situations on the street, or people that I've just met randomly who are going through something. But if I don't have the knowledge of their background, I don't have the skill set, or haven't been placed in their shoes before, I can only do so much. Before I'm just like, okay, now at this point, I've dove in too deep, and now I'm drowning in a situation that I want to help somebody, but I'm hurting them more than anything else because I don't have that knowledge and know-how. So to have someone partnered with that information in mind would be a great asset. If I left my house right now and I unfortunately got into a situation where I get stopped by a disgruntled officer of the law, and I was completely mistreated and battered, but I go to that person's superiors, just like within the military, that's probably going to be a finite group of individuals who are either going to try to protect each other. You might get lucky enough to find somebody who's willing to go to bat for you, but that's going to be a more slim chance than none. So like with any situation, now you're feeling left alone and battered and beaten with no one to turn to because you don't have the right resources. And it's sad that that's the one that I go to, but it's unfortunately within our day and age, that's more often than not type of situation, depending on the part of the country that you live in. I'd like to advocate for anyone who's been in the same situation as me, that I know that I can say, hey, I haven't been in your exact shoes, but I've been in something similar. Let me help. Let me point you at least in the right direction. Hell, let me fight with you the good fight. Because otherwise, I'm not saying empathy can't take a person to where they need to be, but it will only take you so far. Having someone advocate for you who's just a generally good person is all well and good, but having someone advocate for you that knows the pain that you're in, who's felt that weight, that burden, that's where moves start to actually be made in the right direction. I would at least think so.
Thank you for sharing that, Henry. I think what you said was so much. Like it said so much. When you are met with support, and that support looks like you, understands you, resembles and can understand that cultural background, your ethnicity, even the pain part, right? Even your trauma or your pain or what you're trying to go through, that there's value in that. And there's things we don't have to explain, right? When we are met with people who have those similar experiences. I'm going to go ahead and go to Amaya on this question and ask, what do you see needs to happen in a culturally responsive way?
I definitely feel like it's underrated, like with culture. I feel like there's not a lot of it. I also agree with me about like the non-emergency lines. Only because of personal experience. Like my father is embarrassed to call somebody and ask them, like, hey, can you explain in depth what my daughter says, but I can't understand. Like he's embarrassed to communicate that to others. But I feel like it's a whole like different, like if there was different like races and like culture, like you were able to share your cultural background and everything, and like get connected with somebody who can understand that, I feel like that would be helpful to like parents and like even some youth, because I feel like some people like they can communicate better when they know somebody can understand them on a deeper level. Like personally, my youth advocate, Michelle, she's in here. Hey girl. She I can connect with her on a deeper level because she's gone through very similar things with me in the past, and she understands the dynamics of like not having somebody fully like 100% there. Like my dad is not 100% there with like anything, and I feel like if somebody like me, when I talk to somebody whose father is 100% there, it's hard because I feel like they can't understand or can't see like if they didn't have the like how life would be without the father being around. And I feel like that's why I prefer talking to people that can understand that like being in a single parent household with only one person to rely on for everything is extremely hard, because there's some things maybe I don't want to tell my mom, maybe I want to tell my dad, or maybe there's some things I don't even want to tell either of them, but I want to tell my grandma. It's extremely hard with like the way that because my dad, he's African American, so like the way he thinks it's not a thing. Like there's no way, and he agrees with the fact like you choose to be sad. If you could choose to be angry right now, if you wanted to be angry, like he agrees with that. And I feel like there's not enough resources for him to reach out for himself and figure it out, like what it means. And that like it's not a joke, because it really isn't a joke. Like it is real life hard. It's like everyday struggle. But I feel like there's definitely needs to be like more resources. But yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that is important. Just resources and creating understanding and bridges, and can offer support, maybe culturally, that may be difficult, right? Depending on folks' background and where they came from. I love that you shared that you have a connection with your youth advocate and you feel safe there. And that's something that is supportive to you. I'm going to ask Robert. Robert, do you have anything to add to this question?
Every time someone says something, they always give me a trigger. It reminded me of a situation that I went through. I feel like a storyteller sometimes. So my wife and my grandson, we were going to Vegas back in 2016. They haven't been to Vegas, so we decided to go. What happened is that we stopped at a rest stop, and my grandson was always talking about, you want to get I need to get an iPhone. I want an iPhone. Okay, well, you got to work for it. We're just not going to buy you an iPhone unless you need to work for it. What is what do you want to do for it? So he said, we'll talk about it later. Says, well, you went in the restroom and he came out with an iPhone. I said, where'd you get that from? He said, I found it. I said, so we looked at it, opened it up. It was unlocked. So I start scrolling through and start calling people on this iPhone. Now, we are somewhere close to Bakersfield, so I called the number, and this person on the other end said that it belongs to my stepfather, and he's on his way to Arizona to my mom's funeral. I said, okay, so can you have him or how can I get in touch with him? He has no phone. So he has another phone. That was his wife's phone that he had. So I said, okay. So I'm on Highway 15. I'm on 15 right now. I said, so he's my wife's talking to him and he's cursing her out, because he said we stole it. I said, no one stole your phone. We found it. And we just want to return it to you. So he's still cursing out because he thinks we're thieves. Said, you're in a bathroom, someone found it. They could have kept it, but we didn't. So we called the Highway Patrol because now we'll say, meet us here. We're between exit. And it's we called the Highway Patrol because he's cursing us out. He's threatening us. And I said, look, there's no need to be threatening us over a phone. They said, meet us here. We'll give you the phone and we can go on about our business. Now I'm 6'2" at 260 pounds. So we're waiting on Highway Patrol to show up to intervene or to mediators of this phone. We didn't want any problems. So we saw this. I saw the gentleman. He pulled up behind me, and he's like 5'1", and I get out, and he started crying, and he just stopped boo-hooing, and I said, and I'm have lots of empathy for him. I'm a Christian, and so I'm not trying to assault him or anything. I said, here's your phone. What's the problem? He said, the funeral is like 3:00 and I still got 4 hours to drive ahead of me. I said, that's okay. You'll get there. So here's your phone. So I hugged him. I prayed for him. I prayed with him. And I'm crying right with him because he said not only did his wife die, his mom passed away too. So he's dealing with double pain. And I didn't want that. I couldn't have that feeling on me. So I said, look, I prayed for him and just say, don't worry about it. Whatever you're going through, it'll pass. And he went on about his business, and my wife and Terrell's in the back, we all boo-hooing, and because it was an emotional moment for all of us. So you really when you said that, it just really sparked something within me. And I just wanted to share that with everyone. And I really appreciate that. Let me share that.
Thank you.
We have two more questions for our panelists here. I want to know from your guys' perspectives, what services or supports were you linked to after a crisis that you found helpful? I'm going to have Amaya start us off.
So my lovely youth advocate, Ms. Michelle, she's amazing, like so awesome. But she linked me to on-call support. On-call support, like spectacular, like A+, like they're able to like help me process through emotions. They don't underrate how I feel. And I think on-call is like amazing for like thing that I've been connected to. So yeah, just on-call support.
You got linked to, I'm assuming, because I work for the organization, but I'm assuming you got linked to the on-call service at the organization that also supports you after hours. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing. Henry, do you want to go next or Robert?
I'll let Robert go.
So Robert, tell us about what services or supports were you linked to that you found helpful after a crisis?
Well, I'm gonna say this. Stanford Youth Authority, a Youth Solution, helped me out a great deal. That is my go-to agency right there off the top of the line. Because if there's a crisis that I know that I'm going through, I will call them with no hesitation whatsoever, because they will call you right back. And there's always someone on the hotline. There's always someone that will answer your call, and they will stay on the line with you as long as you need them to be. Now, if I can't get in touch with them, I call Lilliput. Lilliput is another children's service that will help. These are all great agencies that will help in any way, and that's the truth. That's who I go, my go-to people. That's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Henry?
Well, I haven't directly done a lot of the communicating and doing within the program that we've been fortunate enough to actually have assist us.
Michelle and Austin within the program who have
definitely checked in on us and helped us out a great deal with helping us get some financial support that we were definitely in need of. But I've also we were blessed a few years back by the VOA, the Volunteers of America organization, and they are another phenomenal team. They went above and beyond. We were actually moving into our home that we are in now, and due to credit history and other financial things that show up on a person's credit report, I don't see how anybody at this point in life has perfect credit, but it was an issue with our now landlord, and she wanted triple the deposit, totaling in excess of over $5,000. And when it comes to my family, I will move hell and high water in every mountain in my way. And I wasn't really one for, like I said, I'm not one for asking for help, but a really good friend of mine, and who's also happens to be an advocacy worker within another program, said, "Hey, have you tried the VOA? Is there anything that you haven't looked at yet?" I said, well, look, it's going to be a tight process because at the time it was the end of the year. They might not have any funding left, but nothing beats a failure but a try. And we made contact, and when I didn't hear anything back immediately, I was like, all right, that's not going to work out. Let's hit the grinding stone. We can make a way out of that. And they gave us a call back. And when they did, they said, hey, look, you meet all the criteria. We just need to get a little bit more information from you, and we can get this ball rolling. And once again, a situation occurred where I really wasn't getting too much information back. So I started to go, okay, maybe it's not going to happen. When it happened, it was unexpected. And they were like, you know what? We got it. Here it is. We've already sent it over to your landlord. You just got to follow up with them and make sure they received it. And you guys are going to be golden. And our timetable actually ended up moving up because of that. We ended up moving out of the horribly crappy, crime-ridden neighborhood we were in at the time to where we are now to secure a better future for our kids. And that in itself, that was an awesome experience.
That's awesome to hear. Thank you, Henry, for sharing that. So in the beginning, we couldn't quite hear you, but I think you said you were linked to your family or housing person, Michelle?
Yes. Okay. Michelle and I believe he's new to the program, Austin. They have been wonderful when it comes to their assistance, just calling and checking up on the family, even checking up on my health issues to see exactly, how I'm doing and if I'm making it to all of my appointments, and just kind of keeping tabs on me and the family all at the same time to ensure that we're doing well. That has definitely been a blessing, just to have somebody show a form of empathy and care that, don't know me from a stranger on the street, but it's one to say, hey, you know what, you crossed my mind, want to make sure you, as well as the family, are actually, doing okay, and if there's anything that's needed. So that's been a blessing.
Thank you for sharing. We have one more big question for the panel. And if we can answer it quickly, we can move into questions from our folks who have come to listen and learn today. But the last question I have for you is, if you could improve safety planning, so planning for your treatment team before a crisis happens, what would it include?
If I may,
Yes, go.
I would probably say disaster preparedness. And I have like two-tier reason for that. The first being is that it's not something that people really consider nowadays until the situation is there that you go, man, some of this could have been prevented if only I had, and then that's it. I mean, look at the world for COVID. So much happened that overwhelmed the masses because of the lack of being prepared for the situation. And that's just to go for any, that's even to go for any natural disaster. I mean, if you're properly prepared, doesn't mean you're going to go through 100% unscathed, but at least you'll have some sort of planning in place that says, hey, you know, okay, this situation is now taking place, but I have this myriad of options at my disposal, or resources rather, that can help myself and my family get through this maybe a little better than, you know, the family over here who's struggling. And that will give me an ability to possibly help someone else too. The second tier to that being, I'm a part-time prepper myself, so I'm one of the stockpile food and water and fuel and disaster prepared medical kits, etc. Those type of things to, okay, the situation happened, instead of having to go out in the masses of public where it's more dangerous now than ever. We can hunker down for a little bit and try to get through it as much as we possibly can. Then when things are a little bit better, venture out. That's my thought to the situation. And I just want to say Josephine has come home and graced us with her presence. So she is now here. But I believe there was some sort of disaster preparedness planning in place, even if it's just a Googled plan, you know, or a brochure, a list of emergency preparedness items that one should possibly keep within their home. Then it's something just to take into consideration from when you were a child. I believe everybody went through fire drills at school. How many people actually experienced a fire at their school? Maybe not many, but the fire drills were there for a reason. Evacuation plans, exactly.
I'm hearing two things: a disaster plan, but also practicing the disaster plan.
Exactly.
Connected to the safety plan when you're having that conversation. Okay.
Yes.
Amaya, what are your thoughts on if we can improve safety planning, what would it be?
Okay. I think I agree with Henry. I definitely think, like, you know, it worked at school. We had plans at school, like, you know, about you spend some time at home as well. But I just think, like, this is a hard one, because I feel like I don't have my treatment, like my CFTs. They're not really often, so I tend to forget every 90 days. But I think just, you know, like resources, like common resources, like, you know, stuff like, I think a thing that my mom really needed recently was like back to school stuff. She was like struggling. There's 5 of us in this house. And, you know, obviously it's hard when 5 kids are going to school and they all need supplies. And that's like financial burden right there. And she didn't really have much resources to go off of. So I would just say, like, you know, like more resources for like the community overall. Like, I don't know if that makes sense.
I think that makes great sense. I think when we're talking about safety planning, a list of resources connected to that safety plan can help. I think even questions around, financial resources, and checking in on that before a crisis or safety concern comes up is important. So thank you for sharing that. Robert?
I have it already in plan. I've had this in plan 5 years ago. Okay, so I have backpacks already set up, and I got because see, when things happen, they're not going to just happen like earthquake, fire, floods. It can be devastating. So first of all, people don't think about when electricity go out, what should you do? You should already have these things in place. So we have walkie-talkies. Walkie-talkies go by satellite. They go by towers. So if you got a landline, it doesn't go by electricity. So how are you going to open up cans of food? If so we tell them, I bought everyone a P38. Henry knows what a P38 is. So these open up cans, and you have stuff that it's like thermal. You heat up your food. So you always have a pot. So we bought some pots. They're real small, but you actually need to have all this stuff in place. You have water. Now there's all types of water. You get a water pack, like a backpack. So you have to have plans. So we have a satellite radio, gets winded up and it charges up your phones or anything that you may need. So we have backpacks. We have 5 backpacks, blankets, food, water, things that, then we have one just for our medicine and an extra pair of shoes and jackets, because you have no idea what's going to happen when it happens. So you want to be prepared. I'm not saying this to make someone get on alert, but you should always be prepared and have one in your car, because anything can happen. We have one in the car because you're driving somewhere. Emergency can happen at any time, at any moment. So I always
So what you're talking about safety planning beyond your treatment team. You're talking about like other life, right? Being prepared for all things, even having that conversation, right, with your treatment team.
Now, don't wait until something happens. Prepare yourself, because when something happens, you may have maybe a minute to get things that you need and move or leave. I don't like saying it because I've been in situations too many times that you have to leave or have to go. And I'm not talking about evictions. I'm just talking about emergency plans. I feel for the people that's in these fires, and they have to get a call and say, you got to evacuate. And so they have very little time to get things that they need. And they have nothing in place. Who do you contact once you evacuate? Where do you go? So
I think you guys have a valid point, though, because when we create safety plans for treatment teams, we're specifically thinking about what the mental health needs are, right? We're thinking about how the team is going to respond. But what do we do when we get a phone call to the treatment team saying, hey, we had this emergency situation. Now you're managing the emergency situation and whatever mental health crisis may be happening on top of it. So I think what you're talking about is valid. And how do we have more robust planning or conversations with families and youth on how to be prepared?
The conversation is better than nothing, in that situation, because if, for example, as I said before, what if one of the families, being helped by a treatment team experience a house fire, and that's devastating enough by itself, but having the loss of everything that you have and not being prepared in the situation whatsoever is beyond devastating. There's no bounce back from that, not immediate at least, but to have, at least have a conversation in place. You don't even have to have a complete plan, but to have a conversation about planning a plan can get the ball rolling. to get those gears moving. And it just, not to just focus in on, fire safety or whatnot, but for anything, whether it be emergency financial planning, to have a little something put off to the side in case of an emergency, for a mental health preparedness emergency, would be to have a conversation about that as well. Say, hey, you know what? In the case that something is to happen, in the dead of night, and you are not feeling what's going on, or it is detrimental, and you can't reach this particular person, there's another advocate or another program or another person who's been in your similar situation, who's willing to be that ear that you can bend to talk to. That would be great as well. It doesn't make a difference what the situation is, whether it's mental health, physical well-being, financial burdens, disaster preparedness. Having a myriad of plans in place for all sorts of contingencies is preferable, if available. And it takes more than just a few kind-hearted individuals to make that happen.
So we are really knocking on the door of the end of our time together. And there was one question that was placed in the chat, and I want to make sure we can get to answering it. So I'm going to attempt to find it and ask the question. I want us to be mindful of time as we go to answer this question. Let me see where it is. You know how the chat always pops up. So someone put in here, I have a question. I am a case manager at a homeless shelter, and I'm an advocate for human trafficking. I recently had a victim of human trafficking, and I was trying to assist her away from the county. I looked online and couldn't locate any support in other counties. How can I reach out to our counties in California? I don't know if any of you guys have connections or thoughts on how to be supportive.
I got a little bit of both. I worked Army CID for several years. I worked in counterintelligence and with the strategic response team. I battled human trafficking and drug trafficking against the cartels in Colombia and Bolivia and in Bogota. What I can say is when it comes to trying to connect individuals with someone who can help, someone who's experienced that level of depravity, it's more of a federal situation. Unfortunately, there are not many programs, if at all, any, locally that know how to assist with that. The biggest thing within human trafficking usually is based within sexual related crimes. And so getting that person the proper assistance and help and guidance, that kind of overcoming that level of trauma is extremely difficult. And that's something that's going to stay with that person for the rest of their lives. There are people to talk to. I would first seek out individuals within a religious background. There are a lot of Christian and Catholic and other religious offsets that have sanctuary and counseling available to individuals. It's not something that's usually widely.
We just had someone write in the chat a platform and a organization that can also help support a little bit of what you're also talking about, Henry. And I love this, like everybody's like helping bring this person some answers of what they know of locally. And I think that there's, take also what Henry has shared with you as an option and consideration. So we got 5 more minutes left. And with that, I just want to publicly honor Robert, Henry, Josephine, who came in for a little bit, Amaya for sharing and being vulnerable and courageous in this conversation around your thoughts and experiences with crisis. I know that this is not necessarily an easy topic of conversation. And I hope that those who attended today learned something new or gave them a seed to plant to see a different kind of change in crisis response for our BIPOC community. We greatly appreciate you all for being here today and for sharing. And thank you all for coming and learning. We wish you the best.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.